This is the current site of Lake Baringo in the Great Rift Valley, the once-tourism attraction slowly submerging the very communities that call her home. Many local businesses, schools and health facilities no longer function in this area. The resident hippos and crocodiles of the lake now reign supreme. The locals here will tell you this didn't just happen overnight. The waters of the lake have been steadily rising and the shores closing in on them over several years. But what is behind the rising water levels of Lake Baringo? Is this simply part of Mother Nature's vicious cycle or the beginning of a man-made ecological disaster? To answer this question, you need to understand some basic facts about Lake Baringo. Located at the far end of the northern part of the Rift Valley, the lake is replenished by three rivers, River Molo, Pekera, and Ol Arabel, all flowing from the scenic Mau and Tugan Hills. It's considered a hidden oasis populated by 7 islands: Rongena, Samyatan, Olkokwe, Parmolos, Lokoros, Gibraltar, and the Devil's Island.
They land a lot of fish and preserving it, so you have those smoking kilns, and that fish will be transported to Kisumu, to Nairobi. Really good taste. Some tilapia. So lots of traders.
But what makes this place stand out is the unique wildlife and scenery that is found here. Home to over 450 species of birds and the endangered Rothschild giraffes that were moved onto the island to help stop the intercommunal clashes between the Pokot and the Ilchamus. But that is a story for another day. The locals describe how life began changing. Many residents are now homeless. Businesses that once flourished now drowned slowly by the lake's waters. Schools and hospitals, the very lifeline of this town, no longer in operation. Our contributor Ken Rotich, a local journalist stationed at the Rift Valley, says it's nothing like he's seen before.
Homes have been submerged at let's say at a rate of 1 meter, 2 meters up around there. The water is rising every now and then. You sleep today, tomorrow the waters are around your home. The next morning they are inside. By the end of the week, you are no more in that place. No, so you have to seek refuge in higher grounds.
The alarming rate at which the lake water has risen has many locals at the mercy of its ever-shifting banks.
Hakuna siku maji ilipikia paka kwangu kama hii. Ni maajabu sana. Hii maji ilikuwa mbali sana kutoka kilomita mingi sana kutoka mahali kwa chini. Hata manyumba ilikuwa iko chini huko. Maji imechukua. Manyumba yote, hata shule sasa maji imechukua.
And now, the big predators of the water have taken hostage of what many once called home.
Hapa ni kwangu venye unaona, ambapo saizi hapo ndani nasapatana na mamba, pia nasapatana na vitu kama nyoka. Because jana ilikuwa maji haijafika mahali niko. Sasa leo asubuhi kufika, maji imeongezeka. Sasa nimeamua kuhama na familia yangu pole pole kwenda kutafuta usingizi kwa mahali pengine ili nianze maisha yangu fresh. Because sasa hapa hivi sina otherwise.
But how did we get here?
Mainly what we are attributing now this problem is the catchment degradation. That's one thing, the catchment degradation, because the catchment was destroyed to some extent, forest was cut. So now in the process, when it rains, the runoff is very high. There's a lot of silt which comes now to a lot of water, which more than what the lake used to have is coming out from the catchment.
Remember the main rivers that feed into Lake Baringo? They originate from the Mau forest. But the largest indigenous forest in the country has been marred with controversial politics over human settlement and activity that has led to massive degradation of the forests.
Because of the catchment degradation. We have had, lots of water flowing downstream into Lake Baringo, and that is just because of the destruction within the catchment.
It's basic science. The lands next to large water bodies are known as catchment areas. They play a crucial role at maintaining the ecosystem.
And even forests that we all know has that function, able to absorb some of this water when it rains. It has that sponge function or sponge properties. So the water is absorbed when it rains. The water is absorbed into the underground aquifers, into the water table. And what happens is that water is then released slowly. And this is what maintains our streams and rivers during drought.
And that's basically what has happened to Lake Baringo. When heavy rainfall is experienced in this area, water runoff occurs due to the lack of vegetation and trees, which would have slowed down that process significantly. This rainwater erodes the soil from the hills and carries silt with it into the lake, in turn causing the water levels to rise. This may sound like an insignificant part of nature's cycle, but for Lake Baringo, the stakes are even higher. Farther south to this lake is the neighboring Lake Bogoria. Unlike Baringo, Lake Bogoria is saline and much smaller, but its banks are also breaking, and scientists fear the two lakes may eventually merge.
With the current, of course, with the increasing climate change, we're told that there'll be prolonged droughts, but as well as rainfall, high levels of rainfall. So where will all this water go to? It can't be retained up in the catchment. It flows down into the lakes where it's like what can contain that water. But then those containers are shallow. So the water has to find its own level. And that is the threat that you're talking about at the moment.
But this is not news to the locals. For years, they have noticed that something strange has been happening to the lake, and now their daily life is disrupted. Traveling is no longer the same. Roads now turned into streams, and those without boats or canoes are stranded and will need evacuation.
Samaki sahi tunatafuta kwa mbali sana huko ng'ambo. Samaki ameenda chini kabisa, lakini tulikuwa tunatega hapa karibu na kuna wanyama tunakutana, lakini sahi sisi wale wanatega sisi wale mbaya sana, kwa maana naweza kutana na makuboko na najua kuboko na malisa wa swali moja tena mamba mingi na malisa net. Kwa hivyo samaki sahi ni kipatikana si rahisi.
We need to do a quick reconnaissance, take a look at what's really going on. So this calls upon our scientists and those others who care about the environment to quickly get to these areas, take the measurements, look back and really put together historical information, data, that then we can use really to project. Many a times people think of, these flash floods filling up our lake. Let's have a great infrastructure. Put a dam somewhere, for instance, so that it can hold that water. But that will not be a long-term solution.
But all these are calls that stakeholders have been echoing for years, and the planning continues for those trying to survive the lake's bursting banks. It's an urgent crisis with far-reaching implications.
So naomba kama serikali ama watu wote ambao wanasikia maombi yetu watusaidie kabisa, kwa sababu hii maji naona zidi kuongezeka zaidi. Kama sasa unaona mvua venye inazidi, mariva zote zimejaa maji. Sasa ukienda sehemu zingine hujui maji itafika lini, na salala usiku naamka maji imeongezeka.